All right, so this is volume 2 of the RewatchaBULLS. In the first one, we did Lakers, Bulls, Game 3, 1991 Finals, which I feel like was Michael Jordan's most important game of the first 8 years of his career. This one is cool. And we did a few weeks ago, we broke down Suns, Sonics, Game 5, 93, which this is just one of my favorite playoffs ever. This little stretch here where you have Game 4, this incredible Jordan game. You also have the Suns battling. Were they the Spurs or it was the Sonics this round? Yeah, Suns Sonics. That's Game 5 that we did, and then the Charles Smith game to end it. Unbelievable stretch of hoops. The background of this is Jordan is starting to break a little bit from all the gambling stuff. He goes to Atlantic City when they have a Knicks game, but Game 1 or Game 2, one of those. And people find out he was in Atlantic City, and people are asking, is that why blah, blah, blah? Is that why you lost the second game?
Well, because they lost the first 2 games.
Right.
Of the series.
But I think between Game 1 and Game 2, he goes gambling. Then Game 3 sucks. He's 3 for 18, but somehow almost has a triple-double, goes to the line 17 times, and then win pretty convincingly. Game 4 is on a Sunday. And, Jordan's not talking to the press anymore. I want to talk about this Knicks team first because I really enjoyed watching it again. I mean, the type of team that just nobody would ever put together anymore. They're playing Oakley, Mason, and Ewing together.
Charles Smith in the rotation.
Yeah, Charles Smith is out there.
Who's huge. Did he get bigger watching it on YouTube now?
No, he was a solid 6'11".
Enormous going back and watching these games. I'm like, man, I don't spend a ton of time walking around wondering how big Charles Smith was 25 years ago, but it just was one of the first things that jumped out.
Well, he was like a top 3 lottery pick.
He was
talented, yeah. They really only had 2 guards. Rolando Blackman was hurt. I think somebody else got hurt. Greg Anthony was the backup. He was like barely playable. And the Bulls start doing something in Game 3, which is just bonkers to watch. They're trapping full court with Jordan and Pippen, 2 of the most frightening people ever. And they're trapping Starks and Doc Rivers, who's hurt. He's playing anyway. And they're just basically trying to get steals, cut off the court, force Ewing and Oakley and Mason and Charles Smith and these guys to actually have to handle the ball in the open court. And it just gives this game this kind of chaotic vibe. But the Knicks are kind of hanging, and then Jordan just gets hot. But where'd you stand on Starks? I feel like he's an underappreciated 90s guy.
Yeah, this whole roster is really, really cool. And I went through like every single transaction on it, right? So you go, well, how the hell did they put this team together? Anthony Mason was like a street free agent who was actually from Queens, and they bring him in, and they're like, hey, he's a pretty good passer for a big guy. Greg Anthony was the 12th pick 2 years prior to this, so he's playing. He was bad in this game. He just straight up was bad.
I thought he was a bad pro, is where I stand on Greg Anthony.
Well, he wasn't as bad. I think his career was better than, like, if you go and just watch this game and you've never seen a Greg Anthony game, you're going to think he's
true.
He was just bad in this game. He was young. And Doc Rivers had a bad game here, but he was part of this 3-team deal where just the year before they brought in Doc, they brought in Charles Smith, they sent out Mark Jackson, they sent out a couple picks. The Knicks got a pick back too. Oakley was the Cartwright trade where they both switched first rounders in this whole deal. So here you have, like, in a very short span of a couple years leading up to this 93 team, like, this team is reinventing itself with these big, tough guys. And it just felt like Knicks basketball. Like, every time, like, Doc Rivers to me, even though he was in Atlanta and more whatever, like, even though he's from Chicago, like, he feels to me like a New York City guy who's tough. Mason, Oakley, the same deal. I mean, Ewing was a physical player, even though you could start to see some of the athleticism stuff declining here with him and frustrating possessions. But then you get to Starks, who was a street free agent, who was at the CBA, the WBL, and then 3 years later, he's guarding Michael Jordan in the Eastern Conference Finals, and he's kind of going toe-to-toe with him in a way that, you're like, that's right. And yes, Starks would have games where it would just fall apart. And he was an extremely fragile. He was like a non-volatile Draymond, or he's a non-confrontational Draymond Green, where Starks would be confrontational, but it was more about him beating himself up. And he had pockets in this game. There's like a 4-possession stretch where he throws it out of bounds. Oakley throws it out of bounds to him. Doc thinks he's supposed to make a cut. They have like 4 or 5 plays in a very short amount of time. We're like, all right, the Knicks are like going down their leg here again because it's them going up against MJ. I'll talk about their fatal flaw later on, but this.
Well, wait, hold on on Starks. he would self-destruct at bad times. Like, remember he headbutted Reggie Miller that time? Even in this game, he gets a charge and he throws this tantrum. I thought he was gonna get kicked out. The rap on him was like, you can get in his head. And I
Totally.
think
He said, he just started talking to himself all the time.
yeah, and it was a guy that if you're a Knicks fan, you loved having him on your team, but you knew you couldn't win a title if he was your second best guy, which was the situation they were in '94,
He had
where they're up
13
3-2.
points. Right. He had 13 points. Oh, are you talking to 94? Go ahead.
Well, I'm going a year ahead, just like they're up 3-2. They just need to win one game in Houston, and they needed anybody to come through that wasn't Ewing, and it just he couldn't do it. And Rolando Blackman, ironically, was supposed to be the guy in the stretch because that was a big trade for him, and he was just too old. I think they were hoping he had what $2 left in the gas tank, and it was just empty when he got there, and that was it.
They only played 7 guys. The Bulls really only played 7 guys, 8 if you count Stacey King. It is funny to see how good Stacey King still thinks he is in certain moments where you're like, oh, and he's just out of shape. And, that was kind of the thing with Stacey King is it just didn't really happen for him as a higher pick. Not like he was number 1 overall pick. But Starks is, I guess I shouldn't say non-confrontational, but I feel like he spent more time fighting with himself mentally than he would. Yeah, he would go at other guys every now and then, but you could see him kind of melt. And he was a player who you want to respect the hell out of because of where he came from, all the stuff he went through, to then be like, dude, you're going at Michael Jordan here, and you respect the hell out of it. But if he had 0 points or 25 in a second half of a playoff game, neither outcome would surprise me. And I think there's something to be said of the fatal flaw for this Knicks team is they wouldn't double. I was texting with somebody that was in this game last night, and I go, what was going on here defensively? And it's like Knicks wouldn't double. Like they don't double until like 2.5 minutes left on Jordan, as Jordan's absolutely torching him. And Jordan's hitting some stupid flat-footed threes that don't even make any sense that you would take, but it's Jordan. And I think the LeBron, if you want to do the screen grab bullshit, you go, wait, Jordan puts a 54, but Starks is chasing him around the whole time without really any doubling. Like, what the hell is that? And then they finally put Doc on him, and then I went and watched Game 5, and there's more Doc on him with that. That's a major problem because this backcourt, you have all these bigs, and the Knicks are still in this game, okay? And we can throw in Game 5 whenever you want, but you keep thinking the Bulls are killing them, and they aren't. And then you're like, wait a minute, the Knicks still have a chance for this thing, and yet they don't have the backcourt depth, and they really don't have a mobile wing to chase Jordan around in this game. Starks is on him so much, and then Charles Smith ends up with them at times, and you just go, look, Starks is a great story, but he's not going to be one of my picks to get up and contest Jordan shots in a playoff game.
I gotta say, I was impressed by Jordan. Made some really, really crazy shots in this game. I thought Starks was in the right spots almost all the time. There's a couple of moments in the second half when Jordan really got going, when they would spread the floor for him. And it starts to look like what basketball looks like now. And if we're talking about, what would it be like to watch Michael Jordan in 2020? Look at any possession when they just keep him 35 feet from the basket at the top, and they put 2 and 2 on each side, try to give him as much space as possible. Well, guess what happens? He goes to the rim every single time, or he gets a wide open, uncontested, like 12-footer because you couldn't guard him. You couldn't stay in front of him. But I thought this Knicks team, it's a really impressive game. Jordan's having one of the 5 best scoring playoff games that he probably had in his career. And they're like within 3 with 3 minutes left. I don't even know who was playing well for them. Starks made some shots, but I didn't feel like the Knicks were like playing particularly great. They were turning the ball over a lot. I didn't think Ewing was that great in this game, but they were so big and so physical, and they just kind of hung around and knew what to do, and very good defensively.
The trap thing that you bring up in the adjustment in this series, and then what they do, like I don't know, could a coach today ask his superstars to go out and trap? Because that's the difference in what we were talking about.
Well, can you imagine LeBron doing that in the year 2000 season? Because it's Jordan's. This I guess it would have been like LeBron in like the
9th season, so
2012,
2000,
right? 2013 Heat would
I don't know, like would Riley be able to say, "Hey, LeBron, Wade, like let's get out there and trap," or would those guys be like, "No, I don't want to do that," because it's crazy to see how good they are at it. And actually, New York did a good job. Here's New York pace-wise, where Chicago is the slowest paced team, I think, that year anyway. But you think of the Knicks, slow it down, these low scoring. They were trying to beat the trap in transition, and they were actually doing a good job with it. But the entire time, it was like this high wire act where you go, oh my God, like they're going to screw it up. They're going to turn it over again. And it just to have Pippen and Jordan out there running traps at you. And it wasn't always just full court, but there were times where the inbound was in question, like the inbound after a make, and Chicago's defending it like it's the last second possession and it's the second quarter. The intensity in this game is so awesome to watch, and the building and everything. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the press looks like Jordan and Pippen a couple times. It looks like a high school team where they just tell the two senior captains to go get a couple steals. And they're like, okay, cool. We got a coach.
Yeah.
And they're just like, and these are like John Starks and Doc Rivers, who were, I think both of those guys made all-star teams, and they're almost incompetent trying to get the ball up. Doc Rivers like can't wait to get rid of it. Now he is hurt. I want to keep mentioning that because I think he had like 3 different injuries, but you see the effects on Jordan in the fourth quarter. He's like dead. And at the end of the third quarter, he has this whole scoring run. He makes his first 7, and then they show him, and he's doing the hands on his knee things, and the announcers are like, Jordan's wiped out. He's really tired. They got to get a breather for him. And it was like, yeah, I would hope so. He has 45 points and then was pressing defense.
Yeah, right. That's it.
I would hope he's tired. It's unbelievable.
The pressing thing, like you have to, like if you're listening to this, you're like, I don't have time. You have time right now. Go watch an NBA team with the best player in the world running these traps and denying the inbound pass in the second quarter. And that's that kind of thing I was talking about. Like, do you want to win, or do you want everyone on Instagram to think you want to win? And I don't know if that's a generational thing. I don't know what that deal is. But if Jordan could go out there and chase the inbound all night long, you can. And the funny thing is, because Jordan is hitting some threes, he hits a 3 that gets him to 80-68, and you're like, all right, this game's going to be over. And it wasn't. Like you said, New York's still hanging around, and it didn't really ever make any sense. He hit this one completely flat-footed, and then the next play, Starks throws it out of bounds. The first 3 that Jordan hits in the fourth quarter, he actually sets a back screen on Ewing. Like here he is, like charging into Ewing's back, trying to get somebody else free. There's zero ball movement because MJ's been so amazing that everybody kind of else like shuts down a little. Go backwards to the start of the game. They do this whole thing about how hurt is he? What's wrong with his wrist? He was 3 for 18. Is he going to be okay? And then he comes out, he misses his first 2 shots. And the announcer's Michael's still feeling the effects. And then he drops 27 in the first half. It's like, no, his wrist is fine. Okay. I've noticed this now in 3 Marv games in the last week. If Marv were around today.
We're criticizing early 90s Marv like he's here. I love this.
Well, I haven't even got to the wig yet. If there's one, like I just try to think of, we should do like in another month self-scouting reports, because I did it about me as a roommate. I just want a full-blown strengths and weaknesses of each other. And we can even need to add in a few of, observations we have about each other. I think we're close enough now. And yeah. I'm awful at noticing wigs. It's historically something that's a real blind spot for me. I'm bad at recognizing other
I'm the
men's
opposite.
wigs.
It's one of my like 5 best talents.
Well, that's great.
I'm so good at it. Toupees and wigs, I know every time.
So coming out on the 2 shot, he and Fratello, the czar, and Marv has this like full body possum going on where it's like Marv showed up to this shop and goes, I want something, but I want a little more body. I want a little more volume this time around. So what can you do? Because this is the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't want a finals wig. Okay. I don't want to get married, but I want to flirt a bit. And I just need something with I want to go sideways, couple side doors, suicide doors.
Little Dorothy Hamill-ish.
yeah, right. Whatever, just some America's sweetheart over here. What do you have for me? All right. So back to Marv. Joe Buck catches way too much shit. I also think, side note, I think Joe Buck's done sort of a national pivot now where everybody's just collectively all in on him. Yeah, everybody's in. And it's
good comeback.
Like, all right. But it was after years of everybody thinking that Joe Buck hated their team, which is stupid. If you're a Bulls fan, do you notice, and I don't care. Wasn't rooting for either of these teams. Do you notice he's constantly kind of bringing up the Jordan struggling thing all the time? And you had to have thought, especially if you're from Chicago, you must have hated Marv on these games. You're like, oh, New York guy, the Knicks guy. Marv doesn't let it go. Like if MJ misses a couple, tiring, shot. The shot has not been as good. Oh, the second half, look at the numbers are. He's tired. And the numbers show that he was scoring like 9 points in the first, or excuse me, 9 points in the second half, 15 in the first half. It just always seemed to be that Marv would find a way to be negative about Jordan. 91, I understood it. 93, I don't.
Well, they have that graphic in the fourth quarter. It says points by quarter, and it's like 9 first quarter, 18 second quarter, 18 third quarter, 5 fourth quarter. And he's like, Czar, Michael Jordan slowing down in the fourth quarter. It's like, well, he has 50. I mean, I think he's doing okay. In the third quarter, he makes his first 7 shots, and this is coming out of the first half where he had 27, and like all of them are contested, basically. I don't feel like they were easy. There's no like fast break. I got to steal. Here's my easy fast break layup. It's like somebody's hand is near him at all times. Third quarter, he goes to a whole other level.
And they're not even in rhythm, Bill. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like to stand, to catch, if the possession's over and everybody's looking at you being like, all right, we'll just go ahead and take the shot. And you're flat-footed, no dribble, pull up 3. And it looks like it's a good, like that's a bad shot. And he was just, I mean, in this game, he knocks all of those down. Every one of those shots, you're like, that's not going to go in. Yeah, it is.
Did you notice Dick Bavetta reffing?
Okay. I did. Did you notice, is it Jack Neese?
Yeah.
Official number 35?
The calls get super shaky in the second half. It becomes pretty clear Stern sent a pretty brisk instructions like this is going back to New York 2-2. It becomes one of those. There's some second half calls where you're like, oh, okay. Oof.
I'm not conspiracy Bill, but it was really tight very early. They got 2 on Charles Smith for nothing. And then Doc got 1 grabbing. And
Did you see how many fouls the Knicks had in this game?
It's got to be over 30, right?
31.
Yeah.
Starks has 5. Starks ends up with 3, but Ewing had 5, Oakley had 5, Doc Rivers had 5, Anthony Mason had 5.
So there was a couple things tight where you go, okay, what is this, like a little tone setting here? What are we doing? And there was a couple calls late that I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But there's a call, I think it's in the second quarter, but I have everything else right, where Chicago did a really good job with their bigs where they were trying to front every post as much as they possibly could. And it led to a lot of contested entry passes and, some good stuff there. Guys working hard. Like nobody wants to front all night long because it sucks. It's hard. And those guys work. I mean, Phil got these guys to work their asses off, man. That can't be emphasized enough. And Oakley loses the ball. It's off of him, and Oakley goes to Jack Neese, who's at the baseline official, and Jack's trying to inbound and getting ready to Chicago, getting their possession, and Oakley's not going to let it go. And Neese yells at Charles Oakley, because you can hear it on the YouTube broadcast. He goes, "You get out of my face." To Oakley.
Wow.
Oakley still won't let it go, and then he tees him up. After he yelled at Oakley, "You get out of my face." Now, look, Oakley was letting him have it a little bit. I still can't tell you how much I enjoy the quick confrontations with the ref, and then everybody gets back to playing. But I can't imagine the social pieces today if a ref told a player, "You get out of my face."
Well, speaking of the replay thing, Grant and Starks get into it in the fourth quarter, and Grant hip checks him. Starks comes running in, and it looks like they're going to fight.
Hockey hipped him earlier.
Right. So, and they have to be broken up. And this was at a moment of the game where the game has a really nice flow. Jordan's playing well. If that happens now, the game stopped for 10 minutes. And it's like, oh, all right, Secaucus. Hey, we have another shot of the hip check. Oh, what do you think? Double fouls? And it would just go on and on and on, and we'd lose all the momentum of the game. Watching these old games and the pace they have make me hate instant replay more and more by the day. I watching the old games on ESPN Classic and Hardwood Classics on NBA TV. The pace is just better. It just is. We don't need all this shit. There's moments in this game where it's like, oh, was that out of bounds on somebody? It's like the ref's like, Bulls ball. It's like, it's fine. We
You
survived.
get the next one.
Yeah, it's fine.
Look, if we were watching all these replays and ruining all momentum and excitement, that's the other thing too. Right from the jump, 17,000 Chicago Stadium, this place is going off, and it's a sustained level of excitement where you're immediately in it, going, "All right, this matters." And I don't know that we have that sustained kind of atmosphere going on. I mean, some buildings, yeah. I mean, Golden State was rolling. Toronto's atmosphere, that was sick too. And there are definitely other places, but that kind of stood out a little bit. But you're right. Like if we were sitting here watching all these horrible replays and every stupid elbow and the sensitivity to any kind of hit, that it's like, we got to stop everything. And the counter's like, well, it's for player safety. And be like, okay, cool. You're actually ruining your product by doing this. And we don't need to replay all of this stuff. We don't, because you know what? You're actually not getting it right. You're not getting it right enough to the level to actually justify how much you're screwing up the enjoyment of an entertainment product. And I hate it now. It sucks.
I hate it as much as you do. The other thing you mentioned from the fan experience, one of the great things about watching this game is it's the Chicago Stadium. The crowd is just totally attuned to Michael and the crowd, and it's a thing at this point. And it happened with Bird and the Celtics and the Garden, the same thing. And it definitely happened with Magic and the Lakers. And there was something about a great guy who belonged to their franchise. I think Kobe had it to some degree in LA at the Staples Center, probably didn't have the same atmosphere. But the guy who belongs to the city and the team and the arena. And it's weird because you think like the Warriors, you would think they would have had it in the same way. But I always felt like the Warriors, there was, especially in those home games, it didn't have the energy of a game like this. It was either they were up by 20 or the crowd was tight. It wasn't this kind of euphoria that you could feel from the Bulls fans. They're like, oh my God, our guy's going off. This is the fucking greatest. That the games the last couple years have like a tension and would get quiet, and it didn't have the crowd noise kind of din that this game, like what you were saying, there was a din for 2 hours and it didn't go away the whole game. You could hear it the whole time. And I don't know whether it's an economic thing. Maybe those fans got priced out to some degree, or I'm sure there's 9 different variables we come up with, but hey, it's really special. It's special to watch.
I do think the Warriors, there's a fatigue of when you're just that good, maybe more so now when you're that good and it's your 5th version of it, where it feels a little flatter, because then it's not the enjoyment of the pursuit, it's the anxiety of hoping to not be disappointed.
Yeah, hoping you don't get bounced.
And
yeah,
that's what I think would happen. Because there's times I feel like, watching some of those Golden State games where it felt like as great a crowd as there was.
Agreed.
And I was there for 2 finals games this year, and it was terrific, except they lost both. So I'm the only guy I think that's probably ever gone to 2 Warriors games and never seen them win in the last 5 years of this group.
Wait, back to the 93 Bulls thing for a second. So they're trying to get their 3rd straight. It's a team that's in a little bit of transition. Like Cartwright is hitting the tail end here as a very useful starter. This is probably the last time he gets some run in 94, but he's at a different point of his career. Paxton's starting to slow down. The guy that I really liked, who was even better a year later, was BJ Armstrong, because he just gave them a different dimension. He could give them the Paxton stuff, but could also like create his own shot. And he was a little feistier defensively, and he really blossomed the next year.
You think he might have the worst fit of anyone that's worn an NBA jersey? Because it was enormous, and it made him look like a skinny fat kid. And then on top of it, the Armstrong thing was like bigger than the St. Louis Arch.
Well, so Cartwright goes 0 for 4 in this game. Paxton goes 0 for 2. And, they got Trent Tucker's off the bench. He's playing. Then you go to like the game 5, which is one of the all-timers. We didn't really need to break that down because everybody knows the Charles Smith game. But even in that game, so Cartwright's 5 for 6 in that game. Their bench basically goes 2 for 11. That team was really Jordan, Pippen, Grant. I think Armstrong was the 4th best guy in the team, and was a guy that I was fascinated by in the Jordan history. And he comes up later in the documentary. This guy who was really cerebral and fascinated by Jordan, and understood pretty early he was never going to be around another human being like this. And there's a whole stuff about how he would read up on books about genius, try to unlock Jordan, figure out his psyche and all that stuff. But I was always intrigued by his relationship to these teams because you always think of like Pax and then Steve Kerr, but BJ was the most important guard they had in '93. He gets lost to history, and Horace Grant's the other one. Horace is great in this game. Horace was the Rodman for the first 3 titles, and kind of gets shoved to the side now. Now it's like Jordan Pippen, and then Jordan Pippen Rodman, and Horace gets a little shoved aside, and he even gets shoved aside in this documentary.
I like Horace more now watching 3 of these games in a week than I did in the moment. Again, I'm just older, more experienced at watching basketball, but there's so many plays in between, keeping the rebound alive, getting an offensive rebound, immediately getting it back out to somebody on the perimeter so they can attack before the defense is set up. He can run all day, okay? He can run all day with you. And Horace ages better than maybe we even appreciated. I mean, other than Bulls fans, look, he was your guy. It was fun. He's part of those first 3. But he was a really important player for this team because he accepted all of this stuff where even the rebounding numbers, because I'm like, man, this guy's awesome. And then I'm like, wait a minute, the rebounding numbers for this series, he wasn't that great. But he's a perfect complement to these incredible wing players they have. And BJ in game 5, he hits the 3 that puts him up in the corner where Jordan drives from the top left and they send a double. And it's reminiscent of, some of the bullshit that LeBron dealt with in the beginning of his career, throwing it out to Donyell Marshall. And it's like, would we be like, look, great players actually do pass the ball and make great reads. And Jordan did it a million times too. And he throws it to BJ Armstrong in game 5, and BJ hits that 3 in the corner. He misses one a little bit later. And that's the biggest shot of the game. And so for BJ to be a guy that was drafted, I think, in the late teens and step in and be able to contribute to this kind of team with that kind of pressure on you pretty shortly after getting drafted is I don't know. There's a lot of like watching this offense going, okay, when Jordan sits and
it gets
awful.
Tough.
Like this is a bad Pippen game. Game 4 is not a very good Pippen game. He just sort of floats. But you brought up something though that I want to stay on. Whenever the Knicks were stuck offensively, and I'm telling you, if you watch this again, you're going to keep thinking they're down much more than they are, and they aren't. They get down like 12 at one point, and you're like, all right, this thing's over. And they fight back. They get it to like 4 or 5. What was their thing that you're like, oh, if they run this, we're in trouble? Because I don't think there is anything.
I don't think they had it. I think that's why they never won a title and why they couldn't get over the hump of the Bulls. They would dump it to Ewing. What they really needed was, it's funny, the thing that made the team so special and memorable was their ability to just play like 2 power forwards with Ewing at the same time. And this weird, super physical, basically the bad boy Pistons on HGH. And it was great. And it got them really far and got them to the precipice. But ultimately not having like that kind of flexible, the ability to play the small ball team, the ability to have that one awesome wing that you could just throw on Jordan.
They just didn't have it. Yeah.
They looked and never found it.
And none of us should ever make the mistake of like, oh, if they had this like wing, we all want these wings that can do a bunch of different things, but Jordan's still going to get 40 if he wants to get 40. But whenever I would watch him, I'd be like, okay, what are they going to run? And they ran pin downs with their big guys that would try to, they'd have the two bigs, whoever they wanted to do it with Ewing and then one of the other 2 power forwards. Because it really was true. Like, it wasn't like they had a power forward that was a little bit smaller and stretched the floor, and that's maybe why they did the Larry Johnson deal later on. But, I mean, Mason was an enormous real 4. And then there's Oakley, and then Charles Smith is bigger than those guys. And they win, 62 games that year. They're the 1 seed. They have home court in this series. They win the first 2 games, and you're watching game 4 and parts of game 5. It's like, okay, your bigs go down to the block. They screen, you send your guards out on a catch, and if they're not open, then you reset and you get it to Ewing, where Ewing has to make these ridiculous turnarounds, or he started doing that thing where Ewing was like good enough still at his size to hard dribble into the paint, but then he'd always have to like just kick it out to somebody. And that's the one thing where Cartwright's minutes, because every offensive touch you see, you were like, what's the point? But Cartwright did a really good job with Ewing, keeping him parallel to the hoop and not letting him get deeper there. Like he would just ride him straight across, and then Ewing would just sort of kick out. And you're going, this team won 62 games, would probably beat anybody else if it's not for MJ. And I don't really know if there's one offensive set from them other than Starks bailing them out or Ewing hitting a 15-foot baseline turnaround, which is
Well,
not a lock, you know?
that's the thing when people do the Jordan won 6 titles, but he never went against a great center, and he lost to Shaq that year when he came back from baseball.
That's not fair.
It's not fair. But never went against the Hakeem Rockets, which, by fluke, it just didn't happen. But to me, this series solves that argument for me, because this was a team that had an elite center who was a 25-point a game. You could go to him, you could dump the ball, and he was
I think
more
he's
likely
fourth
than
in
not going to get it
MVP.
too.
Yeah, I think
he
he's
was
fourth
really
in MVP
good.
voting this year. Yeah.
And, it's the prototypical bigger team that you would have thought they would have a lot of trouble with. Then you would see it again with the 98 Pacers was the other team like that, where it's just like, man, this team is big. Smiths is a problem. They got the Davises.
I love the Davises.
But what made the 98 Bulls special, and then this early 90s thing, they were so athletic. They could flip it with their athleticism, and it was like, oh, you're going to play these big guys? We're just going to press you. And we're able to do this because with Pippen and Jordan, who I say, if we did a draft right now of what 5 guys would you want to try to press the 93 Knicks with, you would say Pippen, Jordan. I think Kawhi is in that conversation, right?
Kawhi, Bruce Bowen.
No, I really think it's just Kawhi. I think Jordan, Pippen, and Kawhi are the 3. If you're just to say, I could have 2 guys, Bruce Bowen. If I could have 2 guys ever to just try to press the 93 Knicks, maybe LeBron, if it was like
Andre Robertson,
2012 Miami LeBron, when he was like peak athletic skill. I don't know. But they were always able to flip it. The center thing didn't matter against them. They were always able to kind of adjust. The only time it really came back to haunt them was 95, and that was because they didn't have Horace Grant, they didn't have Rodman. So this Knicks team, though, the year before they had McDaniel, and they had Gerald Wilkins. And Gerald Wilkins
I always liked Gerald
sucked
Wilkins.
in 92. Yeah, he wasn't good in the 92 series, so they moved on from him. And McDaniel was a lot of the same problem they had with Mason and Smith. They were never able to find that wing, that whoever it was, even like a Kevin Gamble type, just anybody who, like a 6'6" guy
Chris
who
Morris,
could make an outside shot. Yeah, anyone. They just couldn't find him. And it was one of the reasons they lost. What was your take watching Ewing here, 93 version?
I went back and looked at those numbers, and that's where I found the MVP voting. I mean, it was just solid across the board, 25-12. He can make some passes. But to me, this is the start of seeing him becoming, and it's weird too, because we're so used to watching these bigs now run around like crazy. So I'm not trying to do the unfair 2020 athletic expectation of a center that now look at it in 1993, but he's slowing down. He's slowing down. Now, what they're great on is on drives. Their second defender is there a lot to cut off any kind of drive. But it's also because of the evolution of the game, they didn't have to worry about coming off a shooter. So all these bigs, what they did do well a lot defensively is there always seeming to be like 2 guys challenging at the rim there. And there just wasn't a lot of room because the guys are enormous. But I did not leave game 4 and certainly not game 5 when they missed 15 free throws and Ewing misses a huge one. Charles Smith misses a huge one. And then the Charles Smith stuff at the end. I'm not an anti-Ewing guy, but I went like, hey, this is the kind of game where you're not David Robinson and you're certainly not Hakeem.
Yeah, that was the issue. He was always the 3rd best center of whatever year. You could always find 2 or 3 guys who were just better than he was. But if he comes along 10 years later and he's in the 2000s, when all of a sudden it's like Dwight Howard, Amar Stoudemire playing out of position, like he would have been, it would have been so much easier, I think, for him. He just came in during a loaded time.
Yeah, but he was the guy, like he was so athletic at Georgetown.
I know, but he was there for 4 years. Nowadays, he comes out after a year, right? And those last 3 Georgetown years are his first 3 Knicks years.
Is John Thompson still coaching? Because John would be like, you're not ready. Like everybody else gets to leave, coach. You're not ready.
Yeah, you're not ready. Please stay.
Stay a 5th year.
One more. I've worked you into our Georgetown graduate program. Yeah, so you have the Knicks Riley shows up, they win 51-92. They go 7 against the Bulls. I never felt like the Bulls were going to lose that series. This series, especially when they went 2-0 and you knew that they had game 7 in MSG. MSG still had a ton of mystique at that point. and Jordan, it just felt like it was so hard to do a three-peat. We hadn't seen it. When was the last time we had a three-peat before this? It
Well, it
was
had to have been the
Russell.
Celtics, right?
It was Russell, right? The mid-'60s
Yeah.
Celtics.
Because the Lakers have 87, 88, and then lost in 89. So they had 85, 87, 88.
Russell.
Russell.
Knicks and it just, at some point there in 93, it felt like this is the Knicks year. It's all coming up next.
You know what I forgot? As I wanted the Knicks to win this. Now that I think about it, when I said I don't remember rooting for either one of these teams, I wanted the Knicks to win so Barkley had a better chance against them. Although I don't know if Barkley would have had a better chance against that front line. He would have just pulled it out and probably attacked. But, you're just always afraid of MJ. So I don't know if Phoenix would have beaten the Knicks. I don't know.
I feel like the Suns were the third best team that year. I think the Knicks
behind New York.
Them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
Yeah. All right, that was it for the RewatchaBULLS.
I have
two more things. Okay,
they're very quick. Watching how hard these guys ran into each other off of screens was comical.
Oh my god.
Okay, it just needs
it seemed like a fight ready to happen 200 times.
Now, I used to do this thing. Here we go, softball stat guy. But in any pickup game I ever was in, once I started putting a little size on because I was scrawny for a good chunk of my life, if you went to set a screen on me, I would put my shoulder right in your fucking chest plate as hard as I could. And it's really stupid of me, and it's not cool of me to do it. But I would do it to be like, all right, the next time that guy's going to think twice about setting a screen. And these guys were killing each other off the screens. Now, I still think all of this, the defense is so physical and all this stuff. Guys aren't getting hand checked the way they talk about it. People aren't getting decapitated. I'm a broken record. I'm annoying about it, but I'm trying to change the world here one podcast at a time. But the physical stuff going away from the ball on the screens, how hard they hit each other, you're right. It looked like it was a fight going to happen every time, but they all accepted it. Like, you could screen the shit out of Jordan, and Jordan was like, all right, like, I'll get you on the next one. There wasn't this let's stop and talk about it for 5 minutes stuff. It just was accepted.
Well, you notice Marv had the thing where he's like, it's starting to get a little chippy.
A little chippy.
Yeah, you think so? Somebody just went flying into the second row on the screen. You're right. It's getting a little chippy. But yeah, it very rarely deteriorated into like a fight because it was just the way they played.
Yeah, and it's this series specifically, because if you go back and watch the Lakers 91, that's not what was going on. This is a Dick Harder. He's the defensive coach for the Knicks. His philosophy was always they can't call them all. Okay, that's what he did. He was with Jim O'Brien with the Celtics. His whole thing was they can't call them all. They just can't. So just hack the shit out of people. All right. The last thing is the TV promo coming up tonight after the game.
Oh,
the Fresh Prince, Blossom, and the NBC original movie Don't Touch My Daughter, starring Paul Sorvino.
I only saw Don't Touch My Daughter too. I didn't see the first one.
I heard you don't need to see the first one.
The first one sets up the sequel, which is really great. Yeah, I love that. I got to say, I watched the entire halftime show too.
You're a maniac. What?
Oh my God. I love Quinn Buckner, Bill Walton, Peter Vesey, and Bob Costas. And not even behind a desk. They're all facing each other. Like they're in this weird living room. So so Vesey's talking, you could see Costas's entire back and the back of his head. It's like, who thought this was a good idea?
Do you think Vesey just came along like 20 years too soon? Because I could have seen Vesey going head to head with Skip and Stephen A. Prime Vesey?
Vesey was influential. He had some of the best one-liners. He was the one who had the one-liner about when James Worthy got arrested with the two prostitutes. And he had a one-liner. It was like, James always has enjoyed working against the double team or something. He put that in the New York Post.
Oh, the stuff he used to write in the New York Post is a whole nother level. But I'm thinking like a guy that's informed, but then his deal was like he would go on those NBC halftime shows and he would just tear people down sometimes.
Yeah.
Like he was vicious. And it was kind of like what people want on TV from opinion people, but he was also on the NBA beat. And I just feel like if Peter Vesey, the 1990s Vesey that we grew up with, was available as a free agent for a debate show now, he'd be looking at beach houses.
Oh, he would be feuding with Woj. I'll tell you that much. He would not like the whole Woj bomb thing. He would be going head to head with Woj. Like,
yeah, but if it's Woj, I mean, what's he going to do? Beat Woj? Nobody beats Woj.
No, I think they would fight to the death. Maybe Messi just disappears one day. He's never seen again.
Well, if it's Woj, his punches be coming like 30 seconds after Woj's.
The other one was they had Ahmad Rashad and Hannah Storm as the sideline reporters. I like that two sideline reporters for a basketball game.
Okay, the Ahmad stuff, somebody should do like a full-blown hour-long just rip of all the Ahmad cuts, because it's kind of like Ahmad the whole time. There's never been a more confident sideline reporter who's kind of like, hey, I got some tidbits, but I think you're just here to see me.
Well, one of his best friends was the best player in the game.
Right.
So it's like, let's go to Ahmad. He was with Michael Jordan an hour ago.
And look, he's smooth as hell. Like, don't get me wrong. He's smooth as hell. But it was always kind of like Ahmad would be like, do you want me to give you this injury update, or you guys just want to hang out a bit?
All right. That was it for the rewatchables. So next week, we're going to do a 93 finals game. We'll figure out which one. Your guy, Barkley.
Let's do the
Jordan.
Triple overtime.
We could either, the Suns win that one.
Yeah, let's do that one.
I got to research. We might have to turn it up to a Twitter poll again.
Will I get to pick one?
All right, you can pick it. You want to do that triple overtime?
I might want to save it. Because we have to do the Utah game in 97.
No, we have to do the Phoenix, and then we have to do the flu game, and we have to do the last game. So if we do Phoenix next week, I thought we should do one of the Orlando-Chicago 95 games. Because those games are fascinating to watch.
I like what you're doing here, though. Is you're doing. I really thought the 91 call was like a real vintage wine that you knew about, and your friends after the dinner party were like, Bill, I wouldn't have gone with a New Zealand Malbec, but
it was delicious.
You really
it paired perfectly with the venison.
You know what? This is your pod. I actually think I like presenting things and then having you go, oh, it's a good idea. And then, no, we'll just do this one instead, though.
I'll let you pick. We're doing 93 finals because I want to dive into that finals.
So we've done 90. All right.
We skipped 92.
We're just skipping Portland?
Yeah, we're skipping Portland. Everyone knows that the problem with Portland is there's no signature MJ game, because I went through it because I wanted to. I know you did.
Yeah,
I want to do Game 6 Cleveland because I really love that Cleveland team. I was excited to talk about it, but the game wasn't that good. And then the Portland one, everyone knows about the 6 threes in the first half. And there's not that the other most interesting game is that weird Game 6 when the bench kind of wins the title.
You know what? Actually, this is, you know what? I've only been here like a year and a half. I'm not going to put my feet up on the table. You lead the way on this because you're not just picking, hey, he had 1 million points in this game. You're picking the lead up storylines, and it's been fun to go back and read some of the beat stuff about these games going into it. Yeah, I wanted to pick the one the Suns won after they lost the first 2 at home, and just an epic, ridiculous game that they won, but they lose the series. So I don't know. I mean, that's me being a bit of a homer. So I'm willing to.
You with your love of the Suns, I just never knew.
Barkley, it's Barkley. It's just Barkley.
I know, I get it.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll do one of the 93 finals games. Maybe we'll do a Twitter poll. The Rewatchables, Volume 3 coming next week. Russillo, you're doing pods. We have the draft coming Thursday.